Happy Tuesday. I am Emily Shriver. I am the CEO of the Matriots, and I am thankful that you are here today. We at the Matriots have been working hard to endorse women this season. We have just under 80 days until the November election, and as we start to get ready to promote our candidates and talk with each of them. This is our first panel of statewide office holders that we're excited to talk to. We have endorsed only three candidates for judicial office in the state of Ohio, and all three of them are here with us today. We're going to have an invigorating conversation about what justice looks like in the state of Ohio and the goals that each of the three judges and justices have in mind for Ohio. Before we get started, I want to make sure I do some Zoom hygiene. We've been doing Zoom for 2 years, so I don't think any of this comes as a surprise to any of you. Please keep yourself muted. If you want to say hello, do it in the chat. You can also use, I love a good emoji. I love a good celebration up in the corner. If somebody says something that really speaks to your soul, go ahead and tell us that there. And we will be having a good and invigorating conversation here with all three women today. So one of the things that I really want to do, I'm going to take a personal privilege here for a second, is celebrate the three women on the phone today. We have Justice Jennifer Brunner, we have Judge Terry Jamison, we have Judge Marilyn Zayas. And as an attorney here in the state of Ohio, I want to spend just a quick minute celebrating you and thanking you for reaching out, running, putting yourselves out there in the community, and also for upholding justice in the state of Ohio. This is a really exciting moment for Ohio. I want to do a brief introduction of each woman, but I want them to also introduce themselves, right? You all hear my voice quite a bit. And so to give them a chance so you can hear their voice, hear them explain and describe who they are in their own moment would be incredibly important for us. So first and foremost, we have Justice Jennifer Brunner. Justice Brunner has been in state politics for a long time. She has had a storied career across Ohio, but most importantly, she is currently sitting as a justice on the Ohio Supreme Court. She represents all of the Matriots values, and we have been so incredibly excited to endorse her, not just once, but twice. So Justice Brunner, do you want to give us a little bit of background on you and tell us what you're running for?
I'm sure. I'm Jennifer Brunner. I'm currently a justice sitting on the Ohio Supreme Court. And with your help, I was able to be elected in 2020 to be sitting here today to talk to you as an associate justice who is running for Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court. So to kind of give you a thumbnail sketch of my background, on the personal side, I am a daughter, a wife, a mother, a grandmother. My mother is still living. She is almost 87 and doing quite well. I've been married to my husband, Rick, for 44 years, and my children, I have 3 of them, are all married, and I have 6 grandchildren, only 1 granddaughter, but we're like this, so it's okay. She's almost 11, and the boys go on down to age 1. So, and luckily they're all in Columbus, where I live. On the professional side, I've been licensed as an attorney since May of 1983. So that's 39 years, I think. Yeah. God, it was not 40. No, it's 39. So it's why it's a good thing I didn't go into like math or something. I have 17 years of private practice experience. I have served in elective office on and off for the last 22 years, first elected as a judge of the Common Pleas Court in Franklin County in 2000, reelected in 2002, left the bench to run for Secretary of State, became Ohio's first female Secretary of State in 2000, elected in 2006, and served from 2007 to 2011. I ran for the U.S. Senate because I felt like I owed it to women to run for the U.S. Senate, because we've never had a woman serve in the U.S. Senate from Ohio. And it hasn't happened yet. I lost my primary, but that was okay because I learned a whole new way to campaign. So I came back after going back to private practice in 2014, was elected to the 10th District Court of Appeals, where Judge Jamison now sits, and reelected in 2016. And David Pepper, the chair of the Democratic Party, on his third try, convinced me to run for the Supreme Court in 2020. The other piece of it to kind of fill in everything is I have had the wonderful opportunity to do rule of law work overseas in Serbia, Egypt, Sri Lanka, remotely in Kazakhstan, and most recently in Benin in Africa. I just returned from there about a week and a half ago, helping the Human Rights Commission with the American Bar Association. So I'm running for Chief Justice because I care about the future of our courts in the state, and look forward to talking with you more about what that all entails. Thank you so much for having us today.
That was a fantastic introduction, much better than I could have done for you, though I will point out that rule of law is just so incredibly important in developing democracies and in explaining how the courts and the systems work across in other countries. So thank you for sharing a little bit about that with us. I actually didn't know about that work that you have been doing. I know that all three of our judges on the call today all work in the areas of reducing bias and reducing and finding a way for justice to take place here in the state of Ohio. But thank you for that overseas work as well.
Thank you.
Second on my list here is for Judge Jamison to do an introduction. Judge Jamison is currently on the 10th District Court of Appeals of the state of Ohio, and has also had a storied legal career here in the state of Ohio, but starting as a public defender and having her own law firm. So can you tell us a little bit, Judge Jamison, about yourself, please?
Well, thank you, Emily, and thank you to everyone that's listening today. I am originally from West Virginia. I am a third-generation coal miner who got laid off and moved to Ohio to look for new opportunities. I started working here in Ohio, just doing data entry and key punch, and got involved in the insurance industry. Owned and operated my own insurance agency for 16 years before going to law school. I sold my business and attended Capital University Law School. Upon graduation, I did work as a public defender. I did have my own law firm for 8 years, and I've served 8 years on the domestic relations and juvenile court in Franklin County, which is the largest court in the state of Ohio, doing work around juvenile disparities, reducing systemic racism in the juvenile courts system. I started a program called Compass to help men and women that were unemployed become compliant with their child support orders, and received an award from the National Association of Counties for that work in 2017. I went on to be elected on the Court of Appeals, where I currently sit, and I'm looking forward to representing the voters of Ohio. I am married. My husband and I are a blended family of 3 sons, 8 grandchildren, and 1 great-granddaughter, and we're excited to be in this race. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Jamison. I did not know about that West Virginia connection. I was also born in West Virginia. I do not have any great-granddaughters yet, but it's on my list to have that be an achievement in my lifetime as well.
Well, have you gotten to be a certified coal miner yet? Because I've done that as well.
I'll keep that on the list too. And so our third judge who we have with us today is Judge Marilyn Zayas. Judge Zayas has been practicing the law for more than 20 years and has been a judge across the state of Ohio for many years. And I want her to explain that history. But one of the things that I find incredibly impressive, Judge Zayas, about your history is also your deep connection to the community, especially the Latin community, the Latinx community. So if you could do a brief introduction of yourself and tell us a little bit about what you've been working on and where you are today.
Sure. So hello, everybody. So honored to be here. And thank you, Matriots, for your endorsement and your support. Much appreciated. And it just means so much to me. So I'm Judge Marilyn Zayas, and I'm running for Associate Justice at the Ohio Supreme Court. I come to Ohio originally by way of New York City, was born in Spanish Harlem. And then from there, we moved to Washington Heights. And I got to experience what happens when drugs really take a hold of the neighborhood. So this working class neighborhood changed very drastically with the heroin epidemic of the 1970s. And it just became this sort of neighborhood that, kids growing up there were just expected to be a statistic. Um, I had good fortune of intelligence, and I also had the strength of my mother, who taught us really two very strong values. One is she would always say to us, the only inheritance that I can give you is an education. Um, and we knew what that meant. And the other thing that she would emphasize is that we were not to have a dollar in our pocket that we didn't earn ourselves. And we certainly understood what that meant. So when I was a teenager, I was accompanying my mom to court, and that's when, and she was going through a custody battle with my youngest brother, involving my youngest brother. And that's really was my exposure of seeing the impact that the law and courts and judges have on people's lives. I actually put that aside because I knew that I would be able to be self-sufficient after an undergraduate by focusing in on my talent at that time, which was STEM. And I set off to be an electrical engineer, got into technology, got a position with Consolidated Edison in New York City, and then was recruited by Procter and Gamble to Ohio to be an IT manager. So when I moved to Ohio 34 years ago, this was basically a utopia for me. I was very thrilled to be here, but that seed that was planted just was there. And so after 6 years, I was really compelled to leave the security of P&G, go to law school, despite the fact that all my three kids were under 4 at the time. And afterwards, when I graduated, I really have had the honor to work both at a big firm as an intellectual property litigator. I've also worked as a public defender, and I built my practice from the ground up. We talk about judicial reputation. Well, I think your reputation as an attorney should really give a nod as to who you will be as a judge. When I was an attorney, my reputation was, if you have a really complicated case, take it to Maryland. If there's a way, she'll figure it out. And if there's not a way, she'll be honest with you. And I'm very proud of that reputation that I earned, because I really believe that that helped me when I ran for the first appellate district. Given the fact that I didn't have any connections in Ohio but my 3 kids, no family connections, no political connections, no political mentors. I was basically on my own doing a race that was seen to be an impossible race. But what I didn't realize was, because of my reputation as an attorney, that really helped me out, because I was supported. A lot of the sheriffs and the chief of police that are in the different areas around, within the different parts of my county, they were all pulling for me when I ran in 2016. So I was elected to an unexpired term, had to run again in 2018. At that point, I was supported by both prosecutors and defense attorneys, and went from 16 running an impossible race and winning that, and 18 winning by 20 points in a very highly contested race. I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to do at the First Appellate District, and I want to take that to the court, to the Supreme Court. When I joined my court, it had a very unfortunate reputation, and the reputation was that it was a rubber stamping court. Attorneys felt that it was futile to bring a case to our court. I can tell you proudly that is no longer the case. I hear from many attorneys quite the opposite, that they enjoy coming to our court and that they feel that they have a fair chance when they come to the court. And that's really what this race for the Supreme Court is all about. It's really about that everyone, whether it's an organization, whether it's a corporation, whether it's an individual, whether it's someone that's impoverished, no matter who it is that walks into any court in Ohio, that they should not believe, they should know, they should have confidence that they have a fair chance. And the way that we can do that is by doing everything we can to ensure that outside influences and politics are not playing out in our courtrooms, that integrity is playing out every minute and every day in our courtrooms. And every judge talks about, like, I'm going to follow the law, I'm going to follow the law. I will tell you that growing up, in that neighborhood, and being treated like you were going to be a statistic, I just wanted a fair chance. I knew that I wasn't lesser than or more than, and all I wanted was a fair chance. So if I was to deviate from that as a judge and not apply the law equally to all, I would be dishonoring that little girl that, we carry our childhood with us. So that little girl that I carry with me every day, I would be dishonoring her. So I know that, by being faithful to the law, that is the best way for a judge to be faithful to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Zayas. And one of the things that you pointed out is that there is a real concrete impact that lawyers have on the lives of citizens, and then that courts have on the lives of the individuals here in the state of Ohio. And that's one of the things that we want to focus on today as we talk across the room with all three justice and judges, to really talk about the impact that the Supreme Court will have and how you intend to hopefully shift that impact as well. So thank you for bringing that up as one of the very first things that led you to becoming, to getting eventually into the judicial system here, because the impact that the Supreme Court has, and I'm guessing that everyone on this Zoom call, we now have 50 participants, that all 50 of us have started to recognize the real incredible impact that our Supreme Court here in the state of Ohio and the federal Supreme Court has on the daily lives of citizens. Courts are often the only place, judges are the only people who can take away life, liberty, oftentimes property. And so who we elect in the state of Ohio to our Supreme Court matters greatly. I'm going to ask to pin all three of you here so that we can see each other and have a really candid conversation. I want to first explain for our members and for those who are here with us today that judges running for office oftentimes can't reveal exactly how they're going to come out on a case, right? And that is part of the judicial canons that govern the candidacy that judges have. They need to remain impartial and not really discuss how a particular case or controversy might come before them and how they might decide that. That is different, right, than what we see when we have a conversation with a legislative person running for legislative office or executive office. We can ask them about particular policies and what they're going to do. But here with our judges, I want to make sure that we have a level set that if they don't say, oh, if that case came before me, this is exactly how I would come out in that case. If they don't say that here, that's okay, and that we recognize they're bound by a different set of judicial canons. So don't be surprised. Don't ping me in the chat saying, why didn't you ask this very specific question? That is likely the reason why. So thank you very, very much for those fantastic introductions. I feel like we've laid a groundwork today for our conversation about the judiciary and about the work that you hope to do. Our first question today, and really anyone can answer any of these questions. We have a set here, but we might roll with it. But my first question is for Justice Brenner, and it's again a level set type of question. So can you tell us the types of cases that come to the Supreme Court? So what do you see coming up to the Supreme Court, and what is something that we might be surprised as Matriots that actually doesn't come to the court, or that you don't actually see? So what should we expect to see, and what might we not see coming up to the Supreme Court in the state of Ohio?
I'll give you an example just by way of my experience. My very first day of oral argument in 2021, one of the cases before us was how much education or training teachers who carry guns in schools had to have under the statute. We were being asked to interpret whether a law that applied to police officers with needing extensive training was also required of teachers or whether it should be a lesser amount. Interestingly, in the record was a letter from then Attorney General Mike DeWine offering an opinion to, I believe, was the Buckeye Sheriff's Association, that a minimal amount of training was necessary. That was a very curious piece of evidence in many ways, but 4-3, we decided that they needed to have as much training as a police officer did. Now, it was a decision. Then when it came out, the legislature did not like it, and then decided to use legislation to change the import of that decision. And so now I believe the law is that teachers can have no more than 14 weeks of training. So, that's kind of the give and take of the branches of government and how it works. We've also had original actions filed with us, actions that ask us to decide what the law is most generally, unless it's having to do with ordering the government to do what it's required to do, such as a mandamus action, usually start in the common pleas courts and work their way up through the courts of appeals to the Ohio Supreme Court. And in that case, the Ohio Supreme Court has as a threshold decision to make whether or not we actually take that case. And so we have to have 4 votes to actually take jurisdiction over that case in order for us to hear it. Right now, there is a pending case filed by, I believe, the ACLU and others about abortion and about, and the question was an original action. And the only thing that we've done in that case, and I won't say any more about it other than what's occurred in the case, was they asked for a stay of a bill going into effect or taking effect. And we, without giving any opinion, denied that stay. So, there are lots of ways cases about abortion could get to the Supreme Court. This one was not exactly couched in mandamus, but perhaps read in mandamus. But other cases could be a declaratory judgment in the common pleas court, which would then move their way up through the system to the Ohio Supreme Court. Really, about any issue people would be concerned about can come to the Ohio Supreme Court. It's just a question of how it gets there. So whether it has to do with gun safety or children's education or abortion or, probate matters, domestic matters, you name it. On the jurisdictional cases, we decide whether it's a question of great or general public importance. And so we don't do error correction generally like the courts of appeals do. We're looking at what needs to be settled in the law for the entire state of Ohio, for attorneys, for the courts, and for the public.
I think that's incredibly helpful, because we hear a lot that, why hasn't the court taken up this, this particular case, or why haven't they looked at this particular dispute? And it's because that particular dispute hasn't yet arisen, or it's not yet ready, or this isn't quite the right court to argue that particular matter in. And so I think that conversation about what we're seeing for some of the current laws in the state of Ohio is really helpful for our members to understand. For all of you, there's something we hear about called judicial philosophy, right? Judicial philosophy. And I would be interested if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of an overview on your own personal judicial philosophy. So for example, and here's one example, though you can pick how you want to describe judicial philosophy. But what we saw with the federal courts is a discussion about originalism, or the Constitution as a living, breathing document, right? So should we be interpreting the Constitution and we'll think about the state of Ohio's Constitution rather than the US Constitution. But do you think the Ohio Constitution should be interpreted more as how it was written in the 1800s? Or do you think it's a living and breathing document that is to be interpreted as we see the facts of the cases today? And if I'm not asking the question in the right way, feel free to reevaluate and tell me that the question you want to answer is slightly different. I'm okay with that. I do it a lot.
Where do you want to start?
I'll start with Judge Zayas, because she's up in the right-hand corner for me.
Okay, my judicial philosophy generally is I'm really compelled to apply the law equally to all, and to decide cases based on the law, the Constitution, and the facts that come before it. So while people talk about these different ways of interpreting the Constitution, for me, it's more important as to, well, what was argued? What's the record? In other words, if something wasn't argued, then that's not before us, right? So the best way to highlight that is to talk about like Plessy and Brown. So everybody knows that Brown overruled Plessy. And what happened there is that there was a record that was built of schools showing what separate but equal actually looked like and how it actually played out in real time. And and showing the limited resources that Black schools had comparison to white schools, the facilities of Black schools versus white schools. And there was a record that was built as to how this actually played out and how it didn't play out as it was, as it thought it would, and that it was unjust, that it had an unjust outcome. So it wasn't just the justices on the Supreme Court saying, I have this philosophy on how I'm going to interpret the Constitution that governed that. It was also the record that was built that governed it. So even though it is seen as a case that they overruled themselves, well, they really didn't overrule themselves. They made a determination based on a record that was built that came before the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think that's really important because by talking about these styles of interpreting the Constitution, it's giving the public this impression that that it should be so individualized and how the Constitution is seen, and it's creating, it's creating I think, in my opinion, a miscommunication, which is becoming incredibly relevant now because now that we're seeing with Dobbs, we're seeing now that issues that were rooted in the U.S. Constitution are now going to be analyzed through the state constitution, and there isn't a whole lot of case law out there with regard to the state constitution as there is with the U.S. Constitution. So it's being used as a way to scare people into like, well, you don't want to vote for this judge and you don't want to vote for that judge, as opposed to like, look, it really is about the law, the Constitution, and the record. Those are the things that are going to govern cases.
Judge Jameson.
Well, as for me, my judicial philosophy always starts with reviewing the law, reviewing the record, and reviewing the facts of the case. However, I do believe there are times that precedent must be overturned if it is affecting the entirety of our state in a negative way. As being a beneficiary of Brown versus Board of Education, we found that the law was not giving equal access to everyone. And when we don't have equal access, the court has to do something to equalize the playing field. I know that there's a lot of conversation about whether or not we are judicial activists, but I don't believe that we are judicial activists. I believe that we are interpreting the law at the time that we are dealing with. I would not be able to go back to the Constitution because I know that I would not have any access to the court under the Constitution as a Black female, nor would either females have access to the court, to ownership of property, or to even voting rights if we go back to the Constitution. And my opponent is a textualist. He believes that we should go back to the Constitution, which would put all women in a place of being a second-class citizen with no rights at all. And in fact, at that time, women were considered the property of their husbands. So I don't think that we can go back in time to the Constitution and then expect people to answer to that today. So we have to look at the facts. We have to look at the advancements in the law. We have to look at the amendments to the Constitution that have been given so that we can go forward in progress and be able to govern all citizens in Ohio equally.
And Justice Brenner. What would you say?
So, there's a saying, a lot of times people say, oh, the court interprets the law. And what you find out is actually the court may just need to apply it. without interpreting it, because oftentimes the first thing we have to look at is the plain language, and whatever the plain language says, if we can apply it to the facts in front of us, and it depends even what court level you're at, because the facts are generally determined by a fact finder, which could be a jury, which in some instances could be a trial judge, or in an original action could be whatever level of court that action is brought. But when you get to appellate review, there's a deference to the trial court on how the facts have been determined based on factors such as credibility and weight of the evidence. And so, when it's necessary for the court to actually look at the facts and look at the law, if the plain language works, then we simply apply it. Now, plain language could be language in a statute, or it could be language in a prior case, because our case law is a separate body of law in our common law system, which is different from a civil law system that you might see overseas in Europe. So I like to say that our case law is kind of like Legos. You can't just pull a case out of thin air that doesn't have any nexus or connection to an earlier case. So, when we say that a case is on all fours, if you think of a Lego with 4 little corners there, that means that the facts are the same. So the law would be the same. And so it's just actually putting one on top of the other. But when it's a little bit different, then, it may only attach at 2 points here. And that's how our case law grows in order to meet the needs of our society. Sometimes it grows more slowly. And as just Judge Jameson was saying, there are rare times when we would actually overturn prior precedents, such as what the U.S. Supreme Court did with the Dobbs case, overturning 50 years of Roe v. Wade. And honestly, to overturn prior precedent generally involves a change in the case law that that prior precedent relied upon. What happened in the Dobbs decision was that the philosophy of the court changed. And that's not a basis for changing the case law. Otherwise, every time in Ohio, when now we're having Democrat, Republican identified on the ballot, every time when things would swing from one political party dominance to the other, then our case law is going to be very, very unstable. So I want to touch on this issue of textualism and originalism. Folks, this stuff is made up. The Federalist Society began with a conservative law student conference at Yale University in the early 1980s. And out of that has grown, actually, I really urge you to read what's come out just yesterday about a 90-year-old donor named Barr Seid, B-A-R-R-E, Seid, S-E-I-D, who gave his entire company worth $1.6 billion to the man who was heading the Federalist Society, Leonard Leo. And that one transaction has affected our entire U.S. Supreme Court, because this Leonard Leo then has had $1.6 billion at his disposal to influence the justices that the Trump administration not only nominated to the United States Supreme Court, but nominated throughout the federal court system all the way down. And when you read it, it will be shocking to you. And so what I guess I'm trying to say is textualism and originalism are made up doctrines that are used in the federal constitutional interpretation. We do have justices on the Supreme Court now, opponents of both of these two women I'm speaking with here today, who believe that type of thinking needs to be applied to the Ohio Constitution. The Ohio Constitution came into effect around 1803 when Ohio became a state. We had slavery in effect then. Women couldn't enter into contracts on their own. So, and when you try to research, because I didn't know what they were, and I'd be asked, are you a textualist? By people who could barely pronounce the word. Are you an originalist? And I'm like, I don't know what they are. So I looked them up and I realized they're whatever people say they are. So a lot of times textualists and originalists like to call people like us who are just trying to be making sure that the law doesn't hurt people, but that we're following the law. They call us activist judges, but quite honestly, the activist judges I've seen in my career call themselves openly conservative. So go figure, folks. You just want people who are going to be good elected officials, who follow their oath, who are good public servants, and as public servants, as judges, they're first public servants who happen to be judges.
Oh, this brings me to lots of questions. But I'm going to, I'm gonna go out of order of what we have on our sheet here, because one of the very first things that Judge Zayas mentioned is about the process and about looking at, and you all three reference this, right? I look at the law and I look at the facts and I apply the facts to the law as it appears before me today, in the case or controversy that is arising, right? That is the way in which you conduct yourself on the bench, and then adding into that all of these other pieces that we discussed. One of the things, Judge Zayas, then that the normal average everyday citizen wonders is there a way for her voice to also to get to you when you're on the bench? Is there a way for, if you've got a case in front of you that's got these players and these players, but they're missing something that is critical out there, maybe about the impact of what a decision might have, or maybe about some unforeseen consequence that might happen. How would the average everyday matriot express those viewpoints?
There are definitely opportunities to do so. I think we have to begin with understanding the role of the judge and judicial canons. And so as a judge to be allowing oneself to be influenced by anything outside of the parties in any matter, any case that comes before us would be very improper. Because that's outside of the record. We should be governed by the actual record and by the arguments that are being presented by the parties. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities. It's just that those opportunities aren't directly, let me call up the judge and let me ask for an appointment so that I can share my perspective because I believe something is missing. And something could be, in fact, missing. So as a judge, I very frequently go to, like council meetings and things of that nature. Those are opportunities to talk to a judge, not so much about a specific case, because if someone started to talk about a case, I would say, I appreciate, but this is just not something that I can engage in because of the judicial canons. But to understand more about procedure of the court and understand, what it is, procedurally things that are going on in the court. There's a lot of good organizations out there. The Matriots is one of them. We have something called the Ohio Justice and Policy Center that's in Cincinnati. We have the Ohio Innocence Project, which is very well known nationally. So, these are organizations that everyone, no matter what your background and expertise is, that they can get involved in and then become part of that organization. And that organization, these are organizations that sometimes represent in cases, but also write amicus briefs as well. So that would be a legal brief grounded in the law, sharing perspective from that organization and being forwarded from a legal perspective with an issue and controversy. And you see those a lot with the Supreme Court. So those are meaningful ways that anyone can get involved, and I think we'll find not only a meaningful engagement, but also a meaningful opportunity to have a voice and to have some sort of influence in the things that really matter to them.
And one of the comments that Justice Brunner brought up is that currently one of the challenges that you all are facing is this new Republican or Democrat identification for judicial races. So I wondered if you might be able to highlight a little bit about that, just pulling that piece out of what you said, Justice Brunner. Can you tell us how this is different than previous times that you've run, or how it might be impacting your candidacy, and any of the three of you, if you've noticed it influence change the way your candidacy feels, because you've all run before, please feel free to chime in.
Terry, do you want to address that?
Well, thank you. I've always felt that it's going to be helpful to us as Democrats because of the fall off that we have when people don't know what particular party you're in as judges. And if you're not familiar with voter fall off, that's where voters don't vote when they don't see the DNR. And I think that it's had a positive impact for us. And we have so many people that are interested in knowing whether or not you are Democrat or Republican before they vote. So I think it's been helpful to us based on the fall off that I've had in previous races. Thank you. Jennifer.
So, I've won statewide with Democrat next to my name when I ran for Secretary of State. I won by 15 points in a 4-way race for Secretary of State. I've won without Democrat next to my name in 2020. I beat a sitting Supreme Court justice by 10 points in a pandemic where I couldn't go anywhere for a statewide race. And so when they said they wanted to change the rules of the game, it's ironic the way they did it, though, because they said they're only going to apply it to Court of Appeals races and this is the legislature, to Court of Appeals races and Supreme Court races. Because there was a lot of, scuttlebutt. Oh, well, the only reason she won and picked up all those rural areas is because they didn't know she was a Democrat. Well, I don't really think that was the case, because when I was Secretary of State, I was the Secretary of State of 88 counties and had to break tie votes in counties, whether they were red or blue or pink or light blue, it didn't matter. And then ironically, you thought, why would they do this with the Court of Appeals? Now there are only 12 districts. So there are, I think, around 69 or 70 Court of Appeals judges in Ohio. But, coincidentally, after 2020, a majority of the Court of Appeals judges became Democratic. That's what the voters selected. And then they did not change it for trial court judges. And they said, oh, everybody knows who their trial court judges are. I would beg to differ in the urban areas. So, for me, it's really not a problem because my opponent's name is Kennedy. And for years, she has campaigned as the conservative with the liberal name. And I'm the one who got the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award from the Kennedys in Boston in 2008 for my work as Secretary of State. So I'm kind of glad that the voters are going to have full disclosure on which is, that she's not a Democrat who has typically overperformed Trump in all the urban areas like Cleveland and Youngstown and Toledo and Columbus, and that maybe it'll be a little bit more truth in the ballot. I'm just sorry that the lower court judges don't have the same opportunity. I don't, but on the other hand, I don't like politicizing Democrat Republican. But if this, but we have a weird system in Ohio where the parties nominate the judicial candidates in a partisan primary, and then they go to the election ballot up until this year, nonpartisan. So, I find from my work as Secretary of State that every time that a gerrymandered legislature attempts to tilt the playing field when it comes to elections, that sword has two edges and it usually backfires on them. I think it will this year too.
Well, and I had figured that would be a conversation about something that is challenging as opposed to something that you're actually seeing as a benefit. So now I'm interested, because I'm always interested in lots of things, but now I'm really interested in what are you seeing as challenging in this particular environment running for office? What is something that is a hurdle that's in front of you that maybe we would recognize easily, or maybe we actually wouldn't? So I'm gonna start with Judge Jamison.
Well, I guess one of the challenges that I am seeing, because we're traveling around the state, we have the challenge of the conservatives are going to have a huge independent expenditure from the business community to try to maintain the majority on the court. So that's been a challenge. And just basically the challenge of getting around the state and meeting the voters, making sure that we have enough finance to be able to put our commercials out. But as far as some of the rural areas that we've been to, I think we've been received very well. And I think we've been received very well across the state as a whole. So it's just the issue of trying to get around the state, get our commercials out, and make sure that we can compete in the race.
I muted myself. Judge Zayas.
I agree with Judge Jameson. So one of the challenges is, and it's like $3-4 million. I can't remember right now the amount that big business is going to dump into the Supreme Court races to ensure that nothing changes and the status quo is maintained. Clearly they're looking to protect something, right? And from what I understand, they're going to be attacking us on public safety, trying to make it seem as if, I don't know, we're advocates for crime. I don't know. I've never seen anyone advocate for crimes. I find it very interesting. But, they know that, crime rates are up and it's something that folks are concerned about. And so they're going to attack us on that. We just need to make sure that we are well positioned to be able to have the funds to be able to get our message out and to get out a strong message. Because I do believe that when people meet the three of us, they really do feel that this is going to be long-term, systemic, sustained change for the state of Ohio, particularly for justices to have a majority of justices or more than a majority that are there to serve everyone in our community.
And I'll just note that we saw an endorsement from Julia Louis-Dreyfus and I was trying to remember the other, Daily Kos maybe,
Yes.
we tried to get them to join us today, but you're making national headlines for this very reason, for this very.
There were, and I'm glad you bring that up because yes, there are folks that are outside of Ohio that really do care about the integrity of the courts and about the independence of the courts to the point that they're willing to invest. They're not investing in any way that's going to influence us. I mean, I've never even met her. So I don't know how she's going to influence me, so they don't have any influence, but they have a profound understanding and really do care about the direction that the state courts are going to go within our country. The endorsement, the affiliation for me, it's like, look, I'm running against the governor's son, Pat DeWine. I don't think anybody's confused on who's the Democrat or who's the Republican. But I will say that the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, which is a very intense, detailed screening process, they didn't give my opponent the highest rating. They gave me the excellent highest rating within the candidacy for this particular race.
For good objective reason.
Exactly.
For
Well,
good
they are independent, bipartisan, and it is the most intense screening process that I have been through in any campaign, and probably the most that I'll ever go through. It is very, very detailed and very rigorous.
Yeah. And Emily, on the challenges, I want to make people aware that there are going to be 2 ballot issues on the statewide ballot. One has to do with bail, and it's an amendment to the state constitution. This came about as a result of a Supreme Court case called McGuffey v. Dubose v. McGuffey. Essentially, it's a red herring, and it will. I'm concerned that it will likely pass, but it will take away from the Supreme Court the ability to set rules that deal with bail and with bond. And it will set us back decades in terms of setting up people in what really would amount to debtor prison situations, because we had finally reformed our bail and our bond system to the point where when it came to determining the dollar amount, only the dollar amount, that the things to look at were the person's likelihood to return to court so that they could be out of jail pending whether they were found guilty or not, and how much they could afford. Now the proponents of this, and actually Justice Judge Zayas's opponent is heavily involved in that and has come out and endorsed the bond issue, which is a little, or the ballot issue, which is actually kind of concerning in case it would come to us. But the thing is it will take away from the Supreme Court the ability to adopt any rules that deal with that. And so now, based upon media, public hype, if this happens, someone could get a very high bail who could in fact be innocent. Just yesterday, there were two brothers in Knox County, one of whom was out on $100,000 bail and didn't show up for trial. And actually, it was a police involved shooting, and both of them were killed because when they got to where they were in their hideout, they had so many guns and ammunition there were over 1,000 guns and there were 140,000 rounds of ammunition. And, that was $100,000 bail. So the dollar amount didn't really affect whether the public was safe or not. And so, what you're going to hear from all of the candidates, especially the judicial candidates, is, somehow throwing out to us that we're not in favor of public safety. And we clearly are, but we're also in favor of fairness. And so those issues, that and one about having to be a citizen to be able to vote, which we didn't know that, are going to be on the ballot sort of as they're using it as a draw to help try to bring out conservatives. I'm not really sure it's going to work that well, but I just kind of wanted to make the listeners aware of that this one on bail has real problems to it, because we can consider public safety, and we do, first of all, whether we give bail or not, because you can hold someone without bail. And second of all, you can put conditions of reporting drug screens, wearing an ankle monitor. And so public safety is always taken into consideration. But I guess, some folks feel that they needed some issue to boost their candidacies on, and it's unfortunate because a lot of innocent people will suffer.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I really appreciate you highlighting those two other initiatives. We think about what the total ballot looks like across the state of Ohio. What am I going to show up and see on the day of election? And so noting that these two ballot initiatives are going to be there as well is critical for our membership. So thank you for highlighting those.
Sure.
This hour has gone so fast. And I've seen a number of questions in my chat. Can you please ask? And so people are incredibly engaged. Many of them want to know about redistricting, about the ability to enforce redistricting decisions, the ability to think about how the Matriots has impact, the investment by the Matriots, how that's impacted you. I'm just going to give you a moment to really just say whatever it is that's on your mind that you would tell our members, because we've got you for just a few more minutes. And so I'm not going to ask a specific question. Is there something you want to make sure our members know? Let's start with Judge Jamison.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you again for being on the call with the Matriots. I think that the Matriots mission has been so impactful in Franklin County since it began, by bringing women to the table who are leaders, who are thought-provoking, who come with a collaborative sense of working together to make things better for everyone. But I think it's really critical to understand that we need to have voter turnout. Mm-hmm. Anything that you can do to help register voters, to engage them, to make them understand how critical the Supreme Court is this year and why it's critical, particularly for the rights of women and families. It's critical that we get them to the polls. It's critical that we vote our ticket and we vote with information and make an informed decision about who is going to sit on the court. It is so critical. This court has the ability to actually shape Ohio going forward. Redistricting will come back to the table in 2024. Who do you want on the court reviewing the maps if there is a contest on the constitutionality of the maps? Who do you want on the court that's going to make decisions that affect your families, your privacy rights, your voting rights, all of the things that you hold most dear? Who do you want making those decisions when it comes back up? And that's why these races are so critical. And that's why I believe that people outside of the country are watching not only this state, but also Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Wisconsin, watching these 4 states because we are voting on unconstitutional maps. And it's critical to understand that we want maps that will give us representatives that represent our interest, what we would like to see put forth as policy, and not representatives who choose to represent us. So I'm just asking everyone, call 10 people, tell them to call 10 people. Let's get people registered. Let's get them out to vote and make sure that they vote their interest and not the interest of someone else. And thank you for just being here with you today.
Thank you so much. I put in the chat, Judge Jameson says it's critical to get people out to vote. And it really, really is. We saw that in the primaries. Judge Zayas, same space for you to say whatever it is that you would like to tell us.
Well, first, I want to thank you again. It's very meaningful to me when I receive the support and endorsement of a well-respected organization that is bipartisan, because it's not just about the money, it's also about the acknowledgement. And when you're running, this is a statewide race, make no mistake, it's not an easy race to run. But those moments are really are what give me the wind beneath my wings. Because when someone says, "Hey, I believe in you," sometimes we all need to hear that, and it gets us, through a particularly tough day or a tough moment or a tough week. So I want to thank you first. I want to echo some of what Judge Jameson has shared with you. Voter turnout is very, very important. We have a very unique opportunity with regard to the Supreme Court, the Ohio Supreme Court, with regard to having these 3 seats on the ballot. One of the questions that I'm asked very, very often is like, "Oh, I like you, but can I also vote for the other 2 women?" So that's a message that I think, needs to be more clearly understood, that we're not competing with each other, that everyone has the opportunity to vote all 3. And I think that would be very helpful to have help in being able to amplify that particular message. A common question is, how can I share with someone why they should vote for the courts or for the Supreme Court? And I think the way that I try to explain it in the easiest way is, you say to that individual, if you have a case or an issue that you care about, and it came to the Supreme Court, do you want to have a voice as to who is going to hear that? That's what this is about. So it isn't about, I've never been to court, blah, 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 blah. If you have a case or someone you care about has a case or an issue and it comes to the Supreme Court, who do you trust? That's what you're voting on, is who do you trust? You started off talking about being Latina, and I realized in my introduction, I breezed right by that. But, here's the reality for people like me. Latinos currently comprise, I'm trying to remember, what is it now? I think it was at 19% of the populace, or maybe 17% of the populace, but we only hold about 1% of all elected functions nationally. And that's from school board all the way up. So as a community, we know what it's like to be on the menu as a result of that. And so a lot of people feel the same way that aren't Latino. People that don't look like me at all, people who grew up in neighborhoods that look nothing like mine, have issues, and they feel like they have been on the menu as well. So the most important thing is, particularly at the Supreme Court, keeping politics out of the court and having a justice in this seat that truly, truly understands that whether somebody voted for me or not, inconsequential. I'm here to represent everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Zayas. And Justice Brunner, anything you'd like to share with our group?
Just really, I wanted to thank you all. I have watched the Matriots from its inception and know how it's grown. And I kind of marvel at seeing the robustness of the organization now. And Emily, I honor your leadership. And I know you and I had a talk before I think you ever even contemplated doing what you're doing now. You've been very impactful to the process of electing women. You know, there's the one thing about the judicial branch is that there's discretion. And the reason that judges are held to a higher level of integrity is because we have the greatest amount of discretion of any of the three branches of government. And that discretion is oftentimes informed by the reference points of what we've lived in our lives. So I encourage any of you out there who have any desire or thought to either be involved in a campaign or to run for office yourself. We need more women in office, and thank God for the Matriots, whoever she may be, that you're doing what you are doing for our state. And it's a model that I know many states marvel at, and just keep up the great work. Thank you for your wonderful support. And the three sisters-in-law who you see here today will be working together and very hard to bring this home for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the very kind comments, Justice Brunner, but also for the time today that we've shared, where you've been very gracious in both explaining, all three of you, and explaining the process that's happening, helping us get to some of the nuts and bolts of what it looks like to run for office, why we need you in these seats, what you're going to bring in your vision. And so I echo again how thankful we are to have had this moment together. I know there are so many questions that we still have. So I'm hopeful that our Matriots who are on here who have continued questions will find you out in the community at a fundraiser, at an event, at a conversation with another organization as well. And we'll be here to promote your voices too. If you are a Matriot and you're out there and you're thinking, wait a minute, I forgot to renew. I'm asking you to renew. I'm asking you to give to us so we can give to more candidates like those here on the phone today. And as always, we are ever onward towards a better Ohio where women can thrive and prosper. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we will see you all again very soon. We got an election season here, y'all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Justice Brunner. Thank you, Judge Jameson. Thank you, Judge Zayas.